The questions you always had. The answers you were never given. The place to seek the truth. Welcome to Veritas.
Greetings to everyone around the world and a warm welcome to a new season of Veritas, Season 14. Thank you for your loyalty and support all these years and for walking side by side with me on this journey of rediscovery and truth. I'm an eternal student just like you, just lucky enough to be holding the microphone. As a way to show my gratitude and as we begin the Christmas season, I have 2 limited time specials as a way to give back and empower many who haven't experienced our program. The first special gets you 4 months for the price of 3 when you purchase a recurring subscription to Veritas. And the second special, you purchase a 2-year subscription of Veritas and you'll receive a 1-year subscription to Niceness, which has a regular price of $180. 3 full seasons of life-saving interviews, free when you subscribe to Veritas for 2 years. This is a limited time offer only, and it will expire on New Year's Eve. Go to veritasradio.com and click on the subscribe button for more information. You can't see what you don't understand, but what you think you already understand, you'll fail to notice. Some call it clarity blindness. We have more information now at our fingertips than ever before. Yet, most people believe not what is true, but what is comfortable to them. Evil operates with consent. Regrettably, there are many who blindly give their consent away. Do not yield and do not consent to evil. The architects of this house of cards know it. Divide and conquer is their game. We have to stay strong and stay together. And more than anything, we must defend organic life and fight transhumanism. Evil is here as part of this world of duality, so we can understand the lessons. And lastly, the most popular question I receive is, where can I escape to? We'll discuss the answer to this question in detail during part 2. But I can tell you one thing. Unknowingly, if you are listening to this program, you are already a lighthouse wherever you are. You are designed for survival, and your light guides others to safety. Stay with us.
You are listening to Veritas. If this is your first time, welcome home. To listen to tonight's full interview and all of our material, join the Veritas family and click on the subscribe button at veritasradio.com. You can make your purchase with a credit card, PayPal, cash, check, money order, and even cryptocurrency. We are now accepting Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and more. Don't forget to visit the Veritas store for focused life force energy, MMS, EMP shield, solar, and EMP protection, rebounders, CBD pure hemp oil, pure organic sulfur, flash drives with all our Sanitas and Veritas seasons, and other great products. And if you want to get in touch with Mel, want to be a guest on this radio program, have a guest suggestion, or have feedback, just click on the contact button of our website at veritasradio.com. And now, here's your host, Mel Hostelrick.
Neil Kramer is a British teacher, writer, and speaker, specializing in the fields of theology, esotericism, and philosophy. Neil's work focuses on cultivating a deeper understanding of self, soul, spirit, transformation, and divinity. His studies integrate many classical and mystical spiritual disciplines. His background in Christianity and Hermetism has helped to foster a balance of both traditional and non-traditional approaches to comprehending spiritual reality. His website is neilkramer.com, N-E-I-L, Kramer with a K.com. And Neil joins us from the Pacific Northwest. Hello, Neil, and thank you for joining me for another season premiere. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Thank you for having me back. It's always a great pleasure to be with you and catch up and think about the year ahead and the year behind us and take stock of things. It's a pleasure to do it. Thank you.
My pleasure. And as I told you offline, every time we talk, and we don't talk on the phone or like here on Skype that often, but it's very interesting that I talk to you and I feel like I talked to you yesterday. It's like a friend that never stops being in my mind.
Well, thank you. I think it's the regularity of things. Even though it's infrequent, we touch base with each other through the years for quite a while now. We've been in each other's lives for a while. And it's easy to forget that because I know you're a busy man. I am too. we've got a lot of other things to work on and consider and turn our attention to. But, there's this figure in the background. There's Mel and there's Neil, and it's a nice connection. So, yeah, I'm happy to say I feel rather the same.
Thank you. Well, Neil, it's been 2 years when it was supposed to be 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I always say, I'm going to stop talking about this because I hope that that's going to stop. How many months or years at this point are people going to be able to take it? I am completely done with this. And I see a lot of people waking up, even those who have gotten the stinger. They're waking up, even people who are double vaxxed. They're waking up. So something's happening. The matrix is crumbling, and I think they're doubling down now.
Yeah, I would say so. My approach to this is, rather than just diving into the COVID and vaccine issues, which we'll definitely come to, because there's important things I think we can both reflect upon in that way. But if I can, let me start from a top-down view, a very top-down view. Let's kind of go as high up as we can get, philosophically and theologically speaking, and work our way downwards and, as you might say, outwards from there. Because often, if you try to figure things out solely from the ground level, from the toes in the dirt angle with bullets flying and 1,000 things happening all at once, everything is too intense. It's somewhat overwhelming. And it can be very disorienting, and it makes it hard to make sense of anything. So I feel it's good to take an aerial view and get as elevated perspective, as an objective perspective as we can. And I think that gives a better overall context for stuff. So if I may, let me start off with that, and I'll work my way around to COVID. And I think, the underlying message of my conversation today, and the underlying teaching generally for a lot of people, I think, right now is, in this wicked society, do not yield. Do not concede to collude with evil, even when you are surrounded by it. Do not yield. That's the message of what we're going to look at today. So the top-down view is this. Well, as I say, we're going to start at the highest I can think of. Somebody may think higher than this, but this is the highest I can get. Let us say that there is a great, supreme, sovereign, spiritual being, and we sometimes call that entity God. God is not a sentient vapor floating in space. It's not some nebulous, impersonal force hovering in the bloody quantum vacuum somewhere. It is an entity, and it's as individual and alive as me and you are, and it has thoughts and feelings and wishes, and it is pleased and displeased. It has a character. Now, not in the ordinary small human manner, a higher way, far higher. It is a very great spirit being, and as we are talking about God, it has asked us to consider it as a he, like a father. So I shall, for the moment, refer to God as a he, not in the sense of a biological male, of course, but in the role of a creator authority, a head, an honorable, insightful, mature presence, like a good father. And this singular God has a very sublime and magnificent project underway. He is making a spiritual family. He has designed, created, and is educating a family composed of spirit beings that will live with him in a new realm, astral and material, a new heaven and a new earth. And right now, we are at a very profound and exciting moment in that plan, a key stage in his colossal project. We are at the very end of the so-called fallen earth phase. And the teaching, as we said, is, can you face the decay and the contamination of the fallen earth without becoming evil yourself? Can you live through your fleeting 100 years of life and maintain integrity and truthfulness, nobleness, love, probity, and honesty, uncompromising honesty? Can you prove yourself trustworthy before God? Can you embody these fine qualities amid this bloody perpetually harsh world? Can you do it? And that word I just mentioned, by the way, probity, I've been using that word a lot in the last few months. Think of what that word means. It means evident integrity. That's what probity means, evident integrity and virtue. It means sincerity, strict honesty, moral dignity. And if you type that into the 1828 Webster's Dictionary, when it was still a dictionary at that point, it will tell you that probity of mind is best demonstrated by probity of conduct, how you behave. In other words, the soundness and integrity of your actions, your mind and your heart are expressed through your conduct and your comportment. Your outward manner reveal your inward manner. So that's a lovely word for this whole thing, probity. And it's from the Latin, of course, probitas, from probo, meaning to prove, as you see it in law. So think about all those people we see out there right now, kicking and stealing and burning and screeching and murdering and brutalizing. Do they have probity? Are they good? Because the very fact that we are surrounded by this evil is part of the test here in this world, as we'll repeat through this show. And especially now, at the very end of this fallen earth classroom phase, evil is everywhere. It's in people's hearts, it's in the world, it's in the classrooms, the children's classrooms, it's in the workplace, it's in the home, it's in the sky, it's in the soil, it's on the screens, it's on the pages, it's everywhere. It always has been, but it's really evident now. And it's hard to come to terms with the scope of that thing, because you're breathing evil. Everything is totally saturated in a deception, and it's exhausting. This whole thing is exhausting, because you start to see, as we've known for some time, but mainstream society is now invited to see that everything is a lie. We've grown up for generations now in a culture and a society drenched in lies from top to bottom. Everything is a lie. Everything you see is contaminated in poison, fraudulence. And the lies are so sort of profound and so constant that they're now practically invisible to some people. Like everything you can think of, racism, fake, LGBTQ, fake, the Biden administration, fake, pandemics, vaccines, climate change, whatever, fake, voting, fake, universities, rubbish, cancer and AIDS and autism, not natural diseases, World War II, World War I, Vietnam, 9/11, fake history, fabricated, made up. The textbooks and websites and explanations, they're wrong. It's garbage, all of it. The funny thing is that not only are the bad guys faking everything, so are the good guys. They're faking stuff too for different reasons. But there's this giant charade going on everywhere all the time. The end result, of course, is the same. Everything appears phony, unreal, simulated. Nothing true, nothing clear, nothing real, nothing pure ever arises in mainstream life. Nothing in the world. The world is contaminated with deception. And the fatigue of all this is what brings about a common depression or cynicism. And many sensitive people suffer that and may go into some kind of withdrawal from the world or some kind of pessimism or even fantasizing, or worse still, to give in. And that's the challenge at the moment, that half the world is giving in. They're allowing themselves to be defeated, resigned, and sort of spiritually impoverished. And you might say, wow, that's a bloody bleak picture. It's pretty damning. Is that good? Is that bad? What is that, a disaster? Is this all a gigantic disaster? Has everything gone horribly wrong? All this bloody suffering and this preposterous invasion of the body snatchers real life horror show we've been watching over the last 18 months. Is it a disaster? Is it a huge catastrophe and everything's gone horribly wrong? No, it hasn't. All of the things you're seeing is part of a grand, majestic, divine revelation. We are being shown evil. Everyone alive today now can see evil. In the past, prior to the 19th century, it was very, very, very hidden. It was hard to see. But from the middle of the 1800s onwards, which I'll come to say why I say that date later, it's seeable now. And the teaching, as I said, is very simple. Can you be good when you are surrounded by evil? Can you do the right thing when everyone else is doing the wrong thing? Will you yield? Will you give in? And I would say that all the events, of course, COVID, which we'll talk about particularly a little later perhaps, all the events we see in unfolding perfectly from start to finish, overseen by divine counsel, angelic operation, the master of reality himself too. He is utilizing the fallen earth realm where we live to identify, to educate, and to distinguish the members of his family. And a long time ago, he offered us an easier path, a sort of Edenic earth realm path. But we didn't choose that. We chose a hard path. And there's complex reasons for that, which we'll come to another time. But come what may, here we are in the Navy SEALs crumbling fallen earth, mega dark territory. And still undeterred and, long-suffering, patient, God's hand is upon us every single moment of every single day to inspire us to choose goodness completely. He never stops educating, never stops uplifting, never stops loving us, never. And it is all the more incredible then that amid this torrent of evil, a question is being asked of us, a gift, a divine offering, a sort of grand survey being trumpeted from the rooftops of the world right now as I see it. And it's a question every single person must answer, everyone alive. And the question I would say is this: do you serve the world or do you serve God? Let me repeat that. Do you serve the world or do you serve God? Serving yourself is serving the world. Serving your own interests above truth is precisely what most people are doing now. And we're lamenting that with vaccines and jabs and stings and DNA messing about and whatnot. They're serving themselves, people. Their home, their relationships, their careers, their reputation, their finances, their comfort, their peace, their vacations, their social acceptance, their security, their world is more important to them than anything else, than truth or God. And so when pushed, they will demonstrate to you that they serve the world above all else. Even where their mouths might say something else, their actions speak for themselves. Now, on the other hand, serving truth, caring about higher purpose, about the true nature of what anything is, anything, adding in your own life to the integrity of the spiritual society, being an asset to the divine kingdom, communicating honestly every day at home and at work, confronting negative things, holding yourself to a high standard, and sort of personifying dignity and integrity in your daily walk. And these things that I've just said, these qualities, they establish that you're serving God. You're serving God. You're not serving the world, you're serving God. So that's the question. Which is it? Do you serve the world or do you serve God? And we are tested in this stuff all the time. And here's the crux of it. What a person chooses to believe is part of that test, because you can never be told what to believe. You can't be. You can only be asked to believe something. Like if you go in a store, they don't force you to purchase the sneakers, do they? But they might entice you and cajole you and pressurize you with offers and pictures and, people who are coming up to you and giving you free gifts and this and that, or you've seen something and you're a sports person and you think it'll make your performance better or something. So they use marketing techniques to sell you the sneakers. But in the end, if you don't like what you see, you can just walk out. And what we believe in life about very serious things is not that dissimilar to that. Only you choose what you believe, what you think, what your principles are, what your living philosophy is, your faith. And you see, and this is what COVID has revealed so remarkably, most people believe not what is true, but what's comfortable for them. So the majority of human beings at the moment that we see walking around in the world, they seem to me to believe what's functional for them, what's advantageous, what's handy for them. Not what's true, but what serves them well with regards to, as we said, their own feelings and comforts and pleasures and inclinations and whatnot. And whether they're they have feelings of stability and comfort, a certain kind of person, or whether they have dissatisfaction or anger, whatever. They believe what suits them, not what's true, but what suits them. Even if it's untrue, they may go with it. So if a person has been raised under what you might call bad guardianship, which is like bad parenting, bad schooling, bad community, bad culture, which certainly a great many people have been raised under bad guardianship. Imagine then along comes BLM and Antifa, both of them Marxist fronts, of course, and they say, fuck the system, and everyone's a racist, and everything's unjust, and everything's horrible, and let's just destroy the whole thing and start again. That might sound reasonable to somebody who's been raised under bad guardianship. They might go with that and think, hell yeah, because it appeals to a person's sadness and anger and fear, frankly, their trepidation about the world. And that's exactly what those groups are meant to do. BLM, Antifa are fronts. Marxism is a front for communism. Communism is a front for Satanism. Very, very simple. And our angry social justice, anti-European robot people are somewhat disinclined, of course, to examine further up the chain of command of their own groups, because at the top of it is evil. And they don't really believe in anything like that because that's a supernatural thing. And they don't think about anything outside the material realm, which is central to empire, to satanic mainstream normalized philosophy. Material only a naturalistic worldview, nothing else, only trees and rocks and people, nothing else. Material only, random DNA passed on, galaxies and atoms and nothing else. No values, no purpose, no point. So, to hell with it. Be anything, do anything, have sex with anything, any gender, any age, any way you like. Deeply, deeply satanic lifestyle. And all those sad, hypocritical, self-defeating people who do this, perpetrate this inhuman evil, are in for a very nasty surprise, because the most serious destruction imaginable is on the way, which is the loss of their own soul. So it makes me think, and let me just say this bit and then I'll hand it over to you because I know I'm going on a bit here. What is evil when I use that word? Because what is that exactly? And it's important to think about references. Check your reference points. What does that mean, that word? Evil is simply the result of bad choices. It's what happens when a person elects, sort of within their own heart and mind, to participate in corruption, which leads to depravity, which leads to wickedness. And it's a willful turning away from divine natural order. And I'll remind the listener that evil has totally influenced the world, and some would say dominated the world, since the empires of ancient Babylon, through the Persian empires, through the Greek empires, the Roman empires, and right through seamlessly to today's internationalist cultural empire. Totally evil, always was, part of the test, no big deal. All you have to do is not become it. So to say it plainly, evil is deviation from godly life. To go against goodness, truth, integrity, reality itself. To become immoral by telling yourself that it's okay to be amoral, if you see what I mean, in the sense that you no longer recognize morality at all. It's all made up. It's whatever you think it is, whatever you can get away with. And that sort of thinking leads us to where we are today, where essentially mainstream culture is evil. The dominant mainstream global cultural norm is evil. In America, in Britain, in Canada, in Sweden, in Cape Town, in Tokyo, wherever, it's evil. It's conditioning people to be selfish, human-centric, to dismiss morality, excellence, righteousness, and to sort of very slowly but surely renounce truth as some sort of old-fashioned relic from a bloody bygone era. And all the things that feed into that, like liberalism, Marxism, communism, New Ageism, wokeism, political correctness, multiculturalism, all that, they're branches from the same trunk, the same thing. All modes of thinking and acting based on relativism. And as we've said before, relativism is at the heart of empire's strategy, Satan's strategy for temptation. And he uses relativism to persuade us the criteria for what something is varies depending on the individual and the environment. In other words, reality has no objective value outside of human beings. And in this sense, relativism is intensely disconnecting people from reality. So if you ever think, well, where's people's common sense gone? Why can't they see right from wrong? Why can't they see that's a man, that's a woman, this is okay, this is not okay, this is hot, this is cold, this is green, this is red? Why can't they see it? Because they've accepted relativism into the heart. And the whole thing is like a sort of giant stupor. And it starts to interfere with a person's confidence in making their own mind up about things. They don't trust themselves anymore. So when a problem comes along, an apparent pandemic, and the authorities who you've been conditioned to believe say this is what you do, they just trust them because they've been conditioned to disrespect themselves. So bizarre and as unreal as you might say, as it appears, Satan knows that people choose relativism because they don't like to suffer for the truth. So he gives them this different medicine, as you might say. He gives them mainstream culture and science and politics and whatnot. And it contains this medicine, a sort of lovely inability to care about truth. So if you participate in mainstream culture, you'll find a strange thing happens, which is you stop caring about what's true. Say like a heroin or a meth addict who, has this superpower to not give a shit about anything, about the dreadful disaster of their own life and the big, horrible, nasty world out there. And in this sort of never-ending siesta from reality, the sleeper, the normal person, eventually begins to slide into evil. That's what they do. And at that point, you start losing society. You start losing what we would think of as good people. They start to not be good. They might be nice, which we'll talk about in a minute, but they're not good. So I think that's the most important thing, that this thing we're seeing at the moment is a test. When you are surrounded by evil, will you give in?
If plurality or duality is part of our journey, how would a world without evil function?
Yeah.
Is that part of our journey? How would a world without evil function? So don't we need night to appreciate day, cold to appreciate warmth, and evil to appreciate good? And this also reminds me of a quote. The quote says, you can't see what you don't understand, but you can think you already understand. But what you think you already understand, you'll fail to notice. Now, some call it clarity blindness. We have more information now at our disposal than ever before. And as you say, people believe not what is true, but what is comfortable to them. What's your take on clarity blindness?
Yeah, I think you make a great point, which is, do we need polarity in this world? We do. That's what it's for. It's a dualistic world. Polarity is here to teach. And the teaching is very simple. It's about good and evil, ultimately. And prior to that, right and wrong. And prior to that, true and false. And there's this sort of sliding scale of how that works, a continuum of evil. Sometimes I describe it when I'm teaching this stuff. And it's a good thing to consider how that works. How do you turn a nice guy into an evil guy? Or how do you turn a thoughtful person into someone who no longer cares? How does that happen? I would say there's three stages to this. How do you get a person to become evil? The first stage is that you select your target, a person, and you get them to consent to something that's false. You get an individual to okay something that they either suspect or damn well know isn't true. And yet there's perhaps a lot of social pressure behind it. And there's so many examples of this in the world right now: COVID, vaccines, gender, race, history, so many things. We are asked, and again, note asked, not forced, asked to believe something about the world that's false. And every TV show, every game, every movie, every pop song, every school and university is crammed full of disgusting falsehoods, which are then desperately, they're trying to persuade us to swallow them. They're harvesting consent. And evil cannot operate without our consent. Remember that. So the first stage is get consent. The second stage is that you get that same person who has now got into the habit of casually consenting to false things, which they think are rather small and not too much of a bother. You get them to take it a step further, and you actually get that person to collude in outright wrongness, and you get them to do things that they know are wrong. I'll give you an example. You get them to harm our own children with bad medicine, bad education, bad morals, sexual deviancy, which they do in schools, in high schools and in middle schools and sometimes even in kindergarten. They get the adult targets to actually condemn other people who are in any way proud of their life and their morality and their culture and their heritage. And you see that step there. You're not just believing in, how can I say, the giving away of consent and your own sort of personal falsehoods. You're taking it one level above that, where you're actively getting other people to reject truth and chastise and hate those who don't reject what's true. So, Satanism wants you to destroy family. It wants to get rid of private property. It wants to get rid of Christianity. It wants to get rid of the idea of separate, strong nations, get rid of natural gender roles, and get rid of free speech. And this is, in reality, of course, what many social justice and progressive front organizations are really set up for. They're serving that beast system. Finally, then, we've got the third stage, which tends now, by this point, for the individual to happen all by itself. After a long career in consenting to falsehood and knowingly colluding in wrongness, the person becomes evil. Their soul is gone. So you have this progressive conversion from consent to collusion to becoming 1, 2, 3, consenting to falsehood, colluding in wrongness, and there finally becoming evil. And that leads to this situation we're in. And so the duality is essential because it shows you what's right and wrong, what's true and false. Without it, there's no teaching. So people looking for a non-dualistic world here are barking up the wrong tree. People looking for oneness and all that here are barking up the wrong tree. That's afterwards. If you've done the teaching here, if you've understood the extreme, absolute polarization here, then you may go on, if you've proven yourself noble and decent and clean inside, you may go on then to where there is no longer evil, no longer duality, no longer those things. There's something else much more vast and exciting and awesome, of course. But you have to earn it. You don't get it by checking out. You get it by engaging with evil, by looking at it, by rejecting it.
Again, I don't mean to bring what's happening right now, the elephant in the room, because I want to uplift people, but I recently posted on my social media something about what they're really trying to accomplish. Based on the U.S. Supreme Court, you cannot patent a natural substance, or a human being, a fruit, a vegetable, unless you genetically modify it. Yet, so many people, as you're saying, evil operates with consent, and the people who give blind consent to this is what it's making us suffer the consequences. How can we turn the tables around so that the majority stop blindly consenting to this evil?
Well, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to separate two things that appear to be very similar, niceness and goodness. Niceness is a sort of passive demeanor, and it's where a person places value on being pleasant and courteous and polite and agreeable above all else. When you see these ridiculous stickers, be kind, that's what they're saying. Be nice. Don't worry about what's true, just be nice. Goodness is not the same as that. Goodness is an active force. It's not a passive demeanor. It's an active force inside a person. To embody that force is to personify moral excellence, self-control, virtue, godly endeavor and conduct, and resonate an uncompromising insistence on truthfulness in all areas of your life. Sometimes with diplomacy and grace and tact, and other times with vigor and boldness and force. And in today's world, people value niceness over goodness. They don't particularly care whether something's real or not, just so long as that we can, keep going along with their anemic simulation of a nice life. So I think the first thing is you have to say, okay, I have a responsibility, do I, to be good, an active force of goodness, of moral excellence, as we say, of control, virtue, godliness, and to be totally uncompromising in what's true. Yes, you do. You have that responsibility on your shoulders, and you are being measured by it day by day by the creator of the universe. He's watching you. He's seeing how you are stewarding the free will and the force and the love and the dignity that he has bestowed upon you. How are you stewarding those things that have been gifted to you? Are you just keeping your mouth shut? Are you just doing as you're told for a nice, piss-easy life? Or are you actually doing what is true and real and good at all costs? And I emphasize that, at all costs. So, think about that for a second, because obviously I have a natural human sympathy, personal sympathy with anyone who says, look, where I work, if you don't get vaccinated, you get fired, and I can't afford legal things. And whilst some big case is going on, a sort of mass plaintiff defendant case, I can't afford to do that with my family. I'm not sure what I'm doing. It's a funny thing to say, but in a manner of speaking, it sometimes takes that level of emergency to get through to some people what God's trying to show them. It takes that level of crisis. So in a way, real crisis, real emergencies of people, as I say, losing the jobs, losing the money, maybe losing the support and friendship of their own families, will finally compel those people into truthful thought and feeling and action. Perhaps they've been postponing all that for too long. Now, you can't say that for anyone else. It's not your business, but you can know it in your own heart about your own life. Finally, through an emergency like now, you think, you know what? This is my opportunity to begin to serve not the world, not myself, but God. To stand by my convictions and show my fidelity and build a life on true things. And that might mean a new job, a new house, new resources, new money, new health, new family values connecting us together in goodness. So, you notice that. You notice that people are not placing the proper value on embodying goodness. They don't. They just want everything to be okay and go back to normal. That's not okay. Every single person in this world, above the age of 7 or 12 years old, has a role to play. Little children, not so much. They're under the wing of the parents, which fills me with horror most of the time. But there's some good ones out there, and it's a good time in life to enjoy yourself when you're a little kid. But as soon as you get to 12, which is typically the sort of age of spiritual accountability, every single person has a responsibility to embody goodness at all costs, at all costs. And as I said, when people say, well, what would you do about COVID? If there was the vaccination, they were forcing it. Do not yield. If I was in front of a firing squad and they said, hey, just take this fake vaccine and we'll let you go. And if you don't, we'll kill you. I'd say, hang on a second, let me save you the trouble. And I'd put the barrel of the rifle in my own mouth and I'd reach around and pull that trigger and blow my own head off. Of course I would, because I stand by my convictions. I know what is true and nothing will stop that. I will not concede in the face of normalized evil ever. And so the most important thing you can do is vow to yourself to stand by truthful conviction. Because if you concede, not only are you hurting yourself and your family and your society, you're hurting the whole world. And God is like, well, that's a shame. I had high hopes for you, and you've just fucked that up. You've just let me down. Now, it's not too late to turn that around, but there's not long. You better start right now, right today, and I'll forgive you. I'll forgive you your selfishness if you turn it around, if you come to goodness, because I'll keep talking about God and whatnot. Truthfulness is a path to God. totally and utterly a path to God. And if God's a stretch for any listener, forget it. Just say truth instead. If your heart is set on truth, you will lead and have the countenance of and the comportment of a godly man, a godly woman. And in that sense, you'll be completing the spiritual education of this earth. If you don't, if you forget, and you think that life is a vacation and you're here for your own pleasure and comfort, you're in for a nasty surprise.
It is a nasty surprise to wake up to that reality. But when I think of the word purity, as you were saying, or innocence, or the essence of good, I think of an infant. They're not yet transformed by their environment. Some people might say, yes, but you have to equip them in order to live in the wild, in our society.
Right.
Where do you stand?
In what sense?
Some people say, you are pure. This is the way it is. You do not have any prejudice. But then as a child grows up and they think, every single thing I'm saying, I'm ridiculed by it. They seem to be in touch with what some people may call God or the universe. And parents say, you just don't talk about this or that. You're sounding like a crazy person. So society starts to transform the child, and we become what society is.
Yeah, I mean, you have to take a young person from infancy and tutor them in what's good and right and true. And you have to equip them as they start to go out into the world and think and communicate more sophisticated ways, not just play anymore, but actually deeply interact with people. You have to equip them and prepare them to say, the strange thing is, little Jimmy or whoever it is, the strange thing is that the world that you're in is evil. And it didn't need to be like this. God didn't make it evil. We did. And we made it evil by people not caring about what's true and real and just and pure and sound. And you're going to have to equip yourself to deal with that. Sometimes, as we say, you're going to have to be very tactful and diplomatic and patient. And other times you shouldn't do that. You don't need to do that. You can be very bold and vigorous and say, what you've just said is wrong. It's not true. And I reject it. Now, if you want to do it, great, knock yourself out, but not for me, thank you. You also have to not ever, ever send them to mainstream schools, because the schools, the kindergartens, the primary schools, the high schools, the colleges, universities are owned by the bad guys. That's where they do it. That's where the conditioning is. They're doing it from that point on. And the child is being conditioned to accept what many social observers are calling today a post-truth culture. And the child is conditioned to say that what things are is decided outside of you. Someone else is deciding what things mean, not you. You can't do that. And so the child is taught that they have to form their sense of reality by way of authorities outside themselves. And I don't mean God, that's a good authority. I mean illegitimate human authorities. And before long, this conditioning leads to the child accepting lies as a way of life in order to get along and have a nice social experience. So the other thing you need to do is, especially with children and young people, is make sure they've got access to other children and young people who know what truth is, who have been raised right, and who understand the reality of the world and know there's people who believe in truth, there's absolute and moral soundness and goodness, and these tremendous, ancient, fabulous values, and people who don't care at all about them and treat life like it's just a vacation, it's just a playground. And those people tend towards evil. They're inclined to wickedness. And if that sounds old-fashioned, too bad. Many of the best things in life that I see are old. That person then, if they have that preparation, he says, okay, so wow, this is an adventure. There's some people here who are awesome and know what's true, know what's real, have a heart for goodness, and have a moral compass that is implacable, points north. And when it varies, they correct it. And when they stumble, they get up and they point north again. So they're not perfect, but they point northwards. And the kid realizes, wow, it's so good to know there's some of those people in the world. However, they are the minority. Most people in the world are not like that. They don't give a shit about anything except themselves, and they perpetrate evil. How? Through the process we described. They consent to what's false, which most people do, and before long they are colluding in wrongness. And, go to San Francisco, go to Paris, go to London, go to New York, go to Seattle, go to anywhere, in any city, and you'll see it right in front of your eyes. It's not hidden. Turn Netflix on, turn Amazon Prime on, watch an HBO show. It's right there in front of you. They're not hiding it. That stuff is evil. And so the kid then has the responsibility, just like an adult does, to decide what they're going to do about it. Are they going to go with it and have fun and think, fuck it, who cares? I'm not accountable. I'm just me, and I make up my own reality. I'm creating and manifesting my own bullshit. If they do, the child is lost. Or, of course, what one would hope for, especially with your own family and loved ones, is that the kid thinks, it's enticing some of that evil, and sometimes it seems cool, but it's not as awesome, and it's not as cool, and it is shattered by the brilliance of what is good and what is beautiful and what is true. And if that kid has been tutored in that by showing them it in the physical world and in the mental world and the emotional world, the artistic world, the musical world, the culinary world, every kind of world, the kid has seen examples of what goodness is and will choose goodness if they've been given the proper tutelage. If the kid grows up in a random place with a random mum and dad, goes to a random high school and just gets their iPad and watches whatever, you can kiss goodbye to that kid because they're lost. They've gone. So the responsibility is on the guardianship, which is primarily the parents, the mum and dad, a man and a woman. Secondarily, it's the wider family. Then it's the school. Then it's the community, the wider community. And then it's the society, the culture itself. Those levels of guardianship, if they were good, if they were sound, the kids would have no problem. It would be a piece of cake. It would be a joy to grow up easy. But that's not why we're here. We're not here for a piece of easy cake. We're here to learn specifically about good and evil. So the parent's primary job is to instill that in the child and give them the opportunity to reject it if they want. The child may, at 14 years old, dye the hair blue and think that they're the opposite sex and wear all kinds of ridiculous slogans on the T-shirt and say, there is no evil, you stupid old fart. What are you talking about? Well, they have that privilege. If they want to do that, they're allowed.
It's part of being a child. Part of being a child is being stupid and ignorant sometimes.
Sure. But at 14, it wouldn't bother me too much.
Exactly.
35, it starts to worry.
One of the most disappointing things I've had to do in the past few years, Neil, was sharing certain truths with my teenage daughter. You actually met her when she was a little girl.
I did.
And there's a time and a place to share truth with a child. Take the schools these days. They want to teach children sex education too early.
I know, too early.
They're exposed to many aspects of life without having the maturity to discern. But aside from having the nightly dinner conversations, I've had to share some truths about the reality we live in. And I know that shatters a child's paradigm because children trust too much and maybe too impressionable. And as you and I both use the term equip, we have to equip them with critical thinking skills so they become sovereign and not just sheep following someone without questioning the leader, the so-called leader, who may be pushing them over a cliff.
Right. So it's that balancing act between saying, can you examine evil and deconstruct it without being hopelessly contaminated and cynically fractured by it? Can you do that? I can. I don't have a problem. I don't think about evil too much. I know what it is. I know what it tastes like. I can smell it a mile off. I know what it is. I know how not to do it. It's easy. It's a piece of cake. It's simple to make that choice. That choice is easy. That's a piece of cake. However, it takes training. So you have to condition yourself into goodness and decondition yourself from rubbish. So you have to say, so the CDC, the ACLU, the SPLC, the National Health Service in England, Apple, Google, Netflix, BBC, New York Times, the ultra shit Guardian newspaper in England, the Times, the Telegraph, they're all acquiescing to evil. They are telling people false things day in and day out, some of them for over 100 years. It's complete garbage. And you say, wow, so those big institutions, I mean, we're watching Downton Abbey on the BBC. Surely that can't be bad. Everything you're seeing is containing messages, sometimes subtly. Something like Game of Thrones, enormous evil. Something like CNN, of course, enormous evil. New York Times, it was set up as an intelligence operation, like the BBC was. Microsoft, Netflix, Google, Apple, just evil. So you have to think, wow, okay, so let me make sure that I make better choices about what I consider entertainment to be, what I consider news to be. Who gets the news for me in my life? Who collates the news for me? What constitutes a good film, a good movie? What's a good TV show that's funny and cool and exciting and colourful and enriching? What is that? Does it have to be dull and boring, or could it be exciting and brilliant? What is that? So you have to also curate what matter you put into your head, what materials you actually look at and think about, what music you listen to. If someone's listening to Beyonce and Rihanna, you've got a problem. If you're listening to Miley Cyrus and whatnot, you've got a problem, because those people were set up to do something damaging to people. Those moon children, poor bastards. The whole sacrifice system is set up to do something. You say, wow, now this is an esoteric view at first, but these people are not just pop singers with, sexy clothes and a bit provocative. It's something much darker than that. And here's an example of it from a previous time. Here's another kind of person, another kind of singer, another kind of filmmaker, another kind of chef, another kind of writer, another kind of composer, another kind of painter, whatever, who isn't given to evil, who comes from a place with sound values, where they appreciate that every painting, every book, every movie that they make, they have a responsibility to put something quality and decent into society. And you can count on those people. They won't write a bad thing. They won't make a bad picture. They won't do it because they're good people. You know them. And those people create a culture of goodness. Now, that's a small culture. It's 1% of our culture, but it's out there. So if you seek it and you fill your home with that, and your car and your office and your family life, the people in your family, young and old, it's not just the kids, sometimes the old people need this retraining as well, start to differentiate between quality, goodness, and vile, evil. And at first they didn't know that because they've been conditioned not to discriminate, of course. We've all been conditioned not to distinguish or discriminate, haven't we? You have to be a very discriminating person. You have to be. You have to be very judgmental. You have to be. And you're judging right down the middle of right and wrong, true and false, good and bad. It's easy. It's black and white. There's no gray in this. It's black and white.
And that's a word that has been totally turned around, turned backwards, discriminating. Just like calling somebody conspiracy theorist or you name it, but discriminating. Why is it that whenever we use that word, it has such a negative connotation? Again, we've been programmed. If you and I go to the, let's say, ice cream store, and I want chocolate and you want vanilla or strawberry, whatever, we're discriminating. We have a discriminating taste.
Yeah, well, it's how do you get people to consent to falsehood? Well, first of all, make them afraid to embrace truth. And how do you do that? Make the language combative. So if somebody is like Swedish and proud of the Swedish race and accomplishments and ethnicity and culture and heritage and lineage and extraordinary achievements, and that person trumpets that advocacy of those things, then the satanic world system, of course, calls that person, you've guessed it, a racist. And so people are so afraid of being called a racist or a sexist or a homophobe that they don't celebrate the things they want to celebrate. They don't feel confident in embracing them and loving them. And they think, wow, so if I like European things, I'm bad. That's right. That's right. Right now, that's what society is telling people. If you're Eurocentric, you're wicked. There's something wrong with you. You should be Asian or African or Hispanic or this or that or whatever. You're not allowed to be European. I mean, of course, this is garbage and false. Of course it's false. But how many people have you come across in life, on a screen or in person, to shake their hand or look at them or whatever, who think that there might be something wrong with Europeanism? It's shocking to see how that falsehood has been consented to. But I'll tell you a secret. They know it's not true. They know being European or African or Asian is great. It doesn't matter. They're all as good as each other. It doesn't matter. You might have a preference. You might like African culture more. You might like European food more. You might like Asian art more. It's up to you. Whatever. You're allowed to have preferences. But the idea that one of those is a problem and is coming down on the others unduly is garbage. The only times human beings come on each other with the wrong weight, with the wrong prejudice, that they discriminate improperly, it's empire. It's empire telling them what to do, teaching us to think this about Germans and Japanese and Italians, teaching us to think this about English and French and Americans. Totally propaganda made up upside down. Go and examine World War I and World War II with a clean slate. Go through it piece by piece and you'll see the story's not true. What we've been told is not true. It's upside down. And then you think, wow, they've been doing this then since at least 1910, at least for 100 years. And of course, if you have a biblical education, a theological education, as I do, you can say that that's been going on for about 8,000 years. It's nothing new. So you have to accept that part of the warfare on earth is an attitude that you're in a battle. And the battle is not difficult to win. It's just that you can't tell yourself that you're here for the purposes of your comfort and happiness. You're not here to have a nice time. You're here to demonstrate before God you are trustworthy and you have fidelity. You care what is real and true. You're capable of being good. That's why you're here, to demonstrate, to prove that fact, that probity, that word again, to prove that fact. And if you do, which is not difficult, you're fine because you're made for it. Your bones, your sinew, your mind, your heart, your spirit, your soul, you're made for that. You're made for goodness. The only thing that can turn you against that is yourself, is your own complacency and selfishness and lack of confidence and fear of confrontation. That's the thing that turns a person away. So raising young people, we shouldn't be raising them to be sensitive little puffy flowers. We should be raising them to be strong, confident warriors. Now, they can have sensitivity. I'm super sensitive, but I don't let that crush me into a fragile little being that has to withdraw from anything horrible. I also have a warrior spirit. I also have a voice. I also am prepared to die for my truths, as everybody who loves truth should be. Everybody. We don't wish for that, but if it comes, fucking bring it. I'm ready. So that spirit is the key to the child finding the balance to think, wow, so I have to be a warrior as well as being a painter. I have to be a soldier as well as being a poet. I have to be an explorer as well as being a homebody. I have to balance that stuff. I have to be a Renaissance human to have those different aspects of myself. And with those in place, I can confidently face evil and say, no, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in it. No, thank you. I will not yield. I love the truth. I love God. I stand by those things. And my truth, I know, is a pathway to God. I do not concede in the face of normalized evil. I will not yield.
I was raised in Puerto Rico, a place that had every race under the sun, the blackest of the black and the whitest of the white, and everything in between, Asians too. Growing up, Neil, no one had to tell me about our differences. It was obvious every single day. And we all coexisted and lived together in harmony. And I'm still in touch with all my friends from every color of the spectrum. Right, but it wasn't until I moved to the continental U.S. that I started finding that there was a label everywhere. label for this, label for that. And it keeps people's differences above and beyond anything else. And for example, when I see, black entertainment television, nothing wrong. They want to have the channel. Fine. We have freedom of speech. But if somebody ever decided to have white entertainment television or Asian television, all of a sudden, you're too ethnocentrist. You're a racist. Why is it that one applies to one? Yeah, one applies to one, but not the other. I could never understand that.
Because you're being trained in accepting falsehood. You know it's false. You know it doesn't make sense. Everyone does. If I switch on Amazon Prime on my television, it's Black History Month, black culture, movies with black male leads, black this, black that, black the other. And I'm like, wow, what is this racist garbage doing on my television? I don't need to be told things like that. If I want to watch white or black or Asian or Greek or Hebrew or Welsh television, I'll watch it. Great. I'll make that choice. Don't try and push races one over another. To me, that's racist content. So having that kind of thing going on through my own television makes me think, wow, Amazon are bad people. Right, yes, they are. Bingo. Surprise, surprise. Should I be contributing to Amazon spreading racist messages which harms Africans, Asians, and Europeans? No, I shouldn't. Now, is that inconvenient for me to get books and media and computer bits and watch things? It might be, but do I stand by my convictions? I should. So don't pay Amazon to tell us false things about the world. Don't pay Netflix to tell us false things about the world. Get your media in another way, not that way. So of course it's preposterous. Of course it is. It's been like that for a long time. They're trying to damage racial harmony. That's what they're trying to do. So when they say racist, what they mean is European. You're racist. They mean European. That's what they mean. And I'm like, I am European, yeah, but I actually, ironically, came to America to have a freer life, which I still do. And I came to America to have more opportunity to speak freely about true things and godly life, which I do, still do to this day. I'm proud to be American. I naturalized as an American because I want to contribute to this society. I want to add something to it, be an asset to this society, this nation, but also this kingdom on God's world here. I want to add something, contribute a little something to it. And I think that's the least I can do. The very, very least I can do is be an asset to this country to do it. Now, does that sound okay to any thinking person? I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. But that language gets turned around to say, but it's okay for you because of this and this. It's not. It wasn't okay for me. It was difficult. There was lots of obstacles. It was financially and physiologically and spiritually and mentally and emotionally. It's a difficult process. And you know what? It should be. Because you can't just have anybody come anywhere, anytime, because then you'd have nothing, which of course is what they want. So remember what I said earlier, key plank of satanic philosophy, remove nations. So every time you see language like that, you're seeing something that is coded. And the word racism is not what it means. It's not a real word. It has no relevance anymore. Hate has no relevance. There's no such thing as a hate crime or a gun crime or a knife crime. No such thing. Racism, how many truly racist people have you met? Not many, I bet, not many. If any, most people, you wouldn't meet them because human beings tend not to be like that. They're not that stupid. So you have to take control of the language yourself, which is, again, is part of the guardianship element, which is to get to the young people and say, let's examine how these words have changed from 1850 to 1950 to 2021, the same words. And let's pick 50 words and see how politics changes the definitions of words. And we'll have to be cautious of this going forward because as an adult, you'll face this brainwashing all the time. But now you know the trick. You can't be duped by it quite as easily. Part of guardianship, teach young people how to define words properly, not emotionally, not politically, etymologically, logically, properly, what they actually mean. So that, again, is something that most schools won't touch because the school isn't there to educate the child. It's there to turn them into a robot. So you have to be very careful about picking an independent school that has sound values, conscious leadership, and independence from the national curriculum. So however you do it, you've got to do that. And then, of course, you want the kid to grow up with a balanced view so they're not in a little isolated thing somewhere. But you have to have the foundations right. So if you send your kid to a normal school, you're playing, roulette, basically, good luck. But if you send them to a good school, which you'll have to seek out, because there's not many of them, but they are here. They're all over the place, here and there, but they are in every country. They are in every place. If you find them, and sometimes they homeschool networks, they're not always in, private buildings and whatnot. If you find that, putting your kid in that place up until about the age of 14 will set the most important things in place first. And after that, then the kid starts to exercise their judgment in much more free ways, in much more powerful ways, and can make decisions for themselves and all the rest of it. They are doing before then, of course, but within certain guidance, being disciplined in certain, sound ways for the love of the child and for the goodness of the child. Don't restrict them too much, and don't let them do anything. You have to find that equilibrium, as every parent will tell you. At 14, the beginning of the second 7-year cycle in a person's life, they start to exercise their own judgment. And at that point, if they've been brought up with the right foundations, you'll have no problems.
Before we take a break, let me just say this. When you turn off your TV, if you watch it at all, and when you interact with 99% of the population, preferably if you travel, you'll find a vast disconnect. You'll come to the realization that we're being divided on purpose, and nothing we're told by the propaganda machine is true. Because the biggest fear the parasites have is a united population. When you come to that realization, it's going to be a big part of the awakening process. We have to stay strong and stay together. And more than anything, folks, we must defend organic life and fight transhumanism, which is what the next step is. Neil, how can people learn more about your work? And do you have any activities planned for 2022?
2022, you had to think about that for a second, didn't you?
I know.
I'm going to be writing that wrong for the next 3 months, I expect. So if you go to neilkramer.com, you'll find all kinds of things there to listen to and read and whatnot. I have all kinds of teaching work that keeps me very busy. So mostly that's my outreach with individuals and sometimes small groups and occasionally larger groups. So go to neilkramer.com. Take a look around there and you'll find some interesting things.
Folks, we're honored to have our friend Neil Kramer in this season premiere, season 14 of Veritas. One more hour to come. This is Mel Hasselreck, and you are listening to Veritas. Don't go anywhere.
Thank you for listening to the first part of this important Veritas interview. To listen to the rest and all of our material, proceed to the member section or join the Veritas family by subscribing. Click on the subscribe button at veritasradio.com. You can make your purchase with a credit card, PayPal, cash, check, money order, and even cryptocurrency. We are now accepting Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum. Don't forget to visit the Veritas store for Focus Life Force Energy, MMS, CBD Pure Hemp Oil, Pure Organic Sulfur, flash drives with all our Sanitas and Veritas seasons, and other great products. And if you're listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, and share it. And click the bell to be notified when new interviews are available. Now, proceed to the members section or subscribe to listen to the rest of the interview. You don't want to miss it. Thank you for listening to Veritas. Because you don't want to believe. You want to know.